I want to preface by saying that I really like Fire Force. The opening sequence is a spark following along the trail of what sounds like a stick of dynamite in a brilliant shock of color until it softly explodes the shot, revealing a soft railway scene in the early morning. Within seconds, someone spontaneously combusts into this hellfire beast. The main character is introduced in a badass jetpack on his feet rescue sequence. Special Fire Force saves the day, and the killer OP starts. I was practically squealing with excitement and ready to settle in with a bag of hot Cheetos to binge a brand new kick-ass show. And then the side characters are introduced. If you've seen the show, you'll know what I mean when I say that the pacing is sort of off. When the action starts, it's fast-paced and incredible, swirling with crazy visuals and bright colors and gorgeous animation. And the show does a really good job keeping the action coming, whether with a full-blown fight scene or a lighthearted sparring match. But as soon as you catch the characters in a quiet moment, the glaring flaws in their personalities come roaring out. And this has everything to do with the overt sexualization of the female characters. Fanservice is, at its core, deliberately placed eroticism that appeals to the audience and keeps their attention during slow-paced moments in a story. It's not just an anime thing either. American football has cheerleaders to keep the audience entertained during halftime. Carrie Fisher had to wear a metal bra in Return of the Jedi. Marvel Comics has been producing Marvel swimsuit specials since the 1990s, but fanservice in Japan is far more overt and obvious, and sometimes an anime is a little more than just one giant fan service story. Think of harem anime. What's more fan servicey than that? And that's why I don't like Fire Force's sexualization. My problem with how Fire Force sexualizes the girls is that it's purely fan service and has nothing to do with their characters. One minute, Maki is a badass firefighter who can bring sentience to flames. The next, she's guy-obsessed and showing off her boobs at every available moment. I get excited for Tamaki to show up because she looks epic in the opening, wielding fire tails, and a minute into her character introduction, she's tripping and somehow the MC has his hand inside her bra and inside her pants, and it's supposed to be funny? Iris, a nun, is shown having a casual conversation with Maki while they're in the shower, naked, talking about boys with water cascading over them. Maybe I just don't get it because I'm not a straight guy, but these sexual moments where Maki trips and somehow a guy is groping her just aren't funny to me. They're awkward and uncomfortable, and they ruin the pacing of the scene. While they're in the middle of a high-tension chase scene, Maki ends up getting groped like 3 times. We're supposed to be on the edge of our seats here, not uncomfortably chuckling at our boss's sexist joke at the Christmas office party. I get it. It's fan service. But it's just placed so awkwardly and ruins major beats in the story. But Fire Force had Maki getting groped in the middle of a burning building while like 4 Infernals were chasing after her in Shinji, like shit's breaking down, and he's got his hand inside her bra. But I think my biggest problem with this is that the girls are just so out of character during these instances. Maki's a badass, no doubt about that, with a gruff personality and inherent dislike of the MC. She's a second generation and can literally bring life to her flames, creating adorable little creatures that can attack on a whim. She can be shy and self-conscious, but also proud and bright. And with more screen time and, more work put into her character, I can see her easily becoming a fan favorite. And that's why all these instances of her randomly getting groped and then yelling and tsundere embarrassment just feel staged and out of character for her. And it happens so often. Iris is literally a nun, so all of these scenes, like seeing her naked in the shower, are just weird. And why are there so many? There's so many of them. And I get that she's a softer character with more hope for the future, being her, most honest, loudest character trait, but she also works for the Fire Force, putting out infernals that have spontaneously combusted. And she arguably has the most important role in the entire department, as she's the ordained church member that basically ushers these lost souls into the afterlife once they've been put out for good. So seeing her so weak and defenseless in a lot of hero scenes where the MC has to come rescue her just gets annoying, especially since has been working for the Fire Force for years longer. Tamaki, for the most part, is pretty in character during her fan service scenes, being angry and loud and unafraid to smack some sense into the guys that keep groping her, but it's still just weird and awkward when she goes from one extreme to another. And I feel like her guy obsession just doesn't go with a lot of her character at all, considering how loudly she expresses her disdain for the men during these groping scenes. And you know, that's what's happening. I'm calling it groping because that's what it is. And this isn't about fan service. This is, you know, just more my own observation and has more to do with men writing female characters in general. But Tamaki and Maki look exactly the same. Same face syndrome to the max. Are you kidding me? They've got slightly different eyes and one of them has pigtails, but they could literally be twins. Literally the only way I could tell them apart at the beginning of the series was their costumes. And speaking of costumes, are you actually kidding me? Like, why is Tamaki wearing a bikini top? She's a firefighter. Why is her whole ass upper body just exposed? Why does she have hip cutouts? I mean, I'm not saying it's not sexy, I'm saying it's impractical. And maybe if all of the characters were dressing like this, it would make sense. But they are firefighters. It's just bad character design and bad costuming. Maybe if this was a story about fighting magical creatures or religious monsters, you could argue that her costume is a testament to her skill as a warrior, that she doesn't need armor for protection. But they're fighting fire. It makes no sense for how gruff her personality is. It makes no sense for the fucking job description. It makes no sense for the story. It's just there to make her look good, and it's bad character design. She would look more in place at a Western gay bar with her assless chaps than in a hyper-religious organization battling human spontaneous combustion. So to reiterate, the fan service is awkward and uncomfortable and messes up major story beats. The girls are all out of character, straight up unlikable when in the, like, ugh. And it's extremely disappointing due to the potential they all have and the crazy cool powers they possess. And I love female characters, especially because they're so rare to find outside of magical girl anime or harem. So I was excited when I saw how many girls played critical roles in this story, only to have my hopes dashed 10 minutes in when sexual harassment is played off as a gag. But to be fair, there is one female character that I do really like, and her name is Hibana. Hibana is literally introduced sitting atop a throne of men with her tits out, and right from the get-go, I love her. She's a badass with incredible character, seething snark, a super cool design, believable motivations for her heinous actions, and she's an extremely sexual character. But the reason I'm fine with her sexualization is because of the way it's portrayed. It's hers, not just fan service thrust upon her by the need to sell bunny girls for $2.50 on goodsmile.com. It's a self-contained expression of her sexuality, expressed in the sensuality of her character and her rejection of morals and ethics. With the other girls, sexuality is forced upon them by accidental groping or pervy shower shots. With Hibana, she invites the looks and flaunts herself proudly without having her sexuality completely overtake her character. When she's telling people to lick her shoe, it's an expression of her power, going hand in hand with her dominance in the Fire Force industry. And I love her. She's sexy, gorgeous, confident, low-key evil, and best friends with the cute little blonde nun. And she gets the shit smacked out of her in an epic final confrontation with the MC. I'm not upset with Fire Force for sexualizing its female characters. I'm upset with the show because it feels like most of the female characters are only there to be gawked at or to further the main character's story. At the cusp of it, I don't like the women in the show because I think the story would be better without them. And that kills me to even say because female representation in media is so small as it is. And normally, I would be celebrating a show with so many female characters with such cool, diverse powers. Yet I think Fire Force would be far more enjoyable without any of them. See, this is the proof that I'm not just trying to push a feminist agenda. What I'm trying to push is good storytelling. And when a character could be removed from a story and nothing would change, that's when you should question how good of a character they really are. I think it's really important to note that there have been several other videos made about this topic, and I'm seeing a trend happening where a woman will make a video complaining about the rapey undertones, and a man will react to said video and criticize the female fans for complaining, or accuse her of not even watching the show. The disconnect here comes down to the fact that, even though it's 2020, and the majority of animators in the field are women, the majority of the highest acclaimed acclaimed anime of all time have been created by female mangakas, the art school split is about 60 to 75% female, and out of the 30 students in my stop motion animation class, only 3 of them are guys, and one of which is a TA. Men still have this bizarre idea that women don't watch anime, and it's glaringly obvious to us that, thematically, these fan service moments take away from the story. Moments that the majority of male fans of the show probably don't even notice while they're watching it because it's so commonplace it's almost expected. It's the same heavy sigh I give when I start a new show and there's only one girl in the main triage, and I already know she's gonna be the love interest of the main character. I know I sound bitter, and I think I'm allowed to be upset. Fire Force was created by the same mangaka that created Soul Eater, Atsushi Okubo, one of the greatest shows of the early 2000s and on everybody's list of must-watches for the newbies of the anime community. And when I was 12 and watching Soul Eater, everyone told me not to read the manga because they said it was way too sexualized and would take away from the story. There are major cultural differences at play here, but I would argue that it's even worse that this kind of fan service runs rampant in anime when the Eastern animation industry is far more advanced and ahead of the US and Canada when it comes to gender equality, with far more women running their own shows and writing their own manga and working in the industry at large than over here, where Rebecca Sugar broke the glass ceiling as recently as 2013 and became the first woman ever to have her own show on Cartoon Network. I'm sad that we're even still talking about why it would make female fans of a show uncomfortable to randomly have their favorite show interrupted randomly with some groping, when men won't even entertain the idea of watching Yuri on Ice for fear that it'll make them seem gay. But I want to speak up a bit about the other side of the argument, which honestly has less to do with enjoying the fan service and more to do with wanting the feminists to shut the fuck up. And I'm being serious when I say that I am, embarrassingly, one of those people. When I first watched Love, Death, and Robots, my mind could barely comprehend the experience it had just witnessed. I was filled with this incredible, inspirational amazement that not only had a show like this been made, but by a major corporation and to a large, welcoming audience. The anthology series of animation ranged from hyper-realistic big studio video game cutscenes to traditional hand-drawn 2D animation, with Into the Spider-Verse glitching vibes and crossovers between art styles and stories, crafted with such intricate, loving details. It reminds me why exactly I'm working 3 jobs in the middle of a pandemic with a shitty college RA housing to afford an apathetic education and lethally cutting professors who don't remember my name for a film and animation career that I may not get the chance to use due to how burnt out I already am. Love, Death, and Robots is bloody and brutal and colorful and bright, filled with pain and wonder and everything I love about animation. So I was excited to get on Tumblr and join the fandom so that I could continue to explore this universe through fan art and fics and memes. But what I got instead was a series of feminist essays talking about the high amount of sexual violence against the female characters in the anthology, and I hated it. I read the first essay out of genuine curiosity, getting angrier and angrier at the, in my opinion, completely wrong interpretations of scenes, female statistics that I didn't know why were included, words like microaggression and rape culture and titillation. Do you have any idea how many times titillation was used across multiple essays written by so many different people? I tried to find the concept art for Sonya's Edge, the best story in the whole series, starring a badass gay lady who, spoiler alert, had her brain implanted into a giant beast and fights to the death in gladiatorial arenas against other beasts on the daily. And literally the very second search result is an article by the Vault of Culture about how problematic her sexual assault backstory is. Bash after bash of my favorite episodes, The Witness, Beyond the Aquila Rift, and even Good Hunting. These essays rip the leading supporting female characters out of their story settings to talk instead about how their underwear is visible and how their nipples stand out against their tank tops. And a bunch of useless crap that had no bearing on the story, wasn't even that noticeable upon first watches, and treats these characters more like they were only created to be vessels for male enjoyment rather than the complex and emotional beings I resonated with when I watched the show. But my point is, I'm not just critical of Fire Force, I'm critical of myself and how I interpret the media I consume. Because maybe these writers genuinely believe the crap that I believe they're spewing. Maybe it's not crap. Maybe to them, these issues in Love, Death, and Robots ruins the show for them, alienating them the same way that the fan service in Fire Force alienates me. Maybe I shouldn't pick and choose which female characters I get to say are empowered. Maybe I'm just a bitter fuck who hates fun and doesn't have a sense of humor. But I do understand the frustration some of you might have of critical media bashing on your favorite show, or even your favorite character who you may resonate with and see no wrongdoing being done to. I feel that same frustration, and trying to pick apart a piece of transformative work that criticizes something you love so dearly can be hard. It takes patience and senior level literary skills that you may not have used since high school, and above all, empathy toward a demographic you may not be a part of. And I still don't agree with all of these interpretations of Love, Death, and Robots, but I can understand why the writers may feel the way that they do. Here's my final stance on fan service. Guys, if you want to get your dick wet, just go watch some porn. It's free, it's all over the internet, it won't take away from your favorite show. And I mean, if you just want to jerk it to Maki, I guarantee there are probably 50 artists drawing hentai of her right now, and fanfiction authors shipping her with Shinra and an Inferni, and if there aren't, just commission it. Independent artists will draw any kinky shit you want. And you know, your commissions will probably inspire others to draw that shit for free. Fan service is so unnecessary because we already have fandoms that'll create that content, and it won't interfere with the canon story taking place. I mean, my favorite character at the moment is Bakugo from My Hero Academia, but if the show suddenly started putting fan service of him in where he trips and loses his pants, or he comes out of a pool with water cascading down his chest muscles, I'd be annoyed because it's out of character, it isn't anything like he'd ever do in the show's canon, and it would take away from the story. Fanfiction is fanfiction for a reason. The reason I care so much about this crap is because I really, really like Fire Force. It has a lot of potential, and I'm gonna continue watching it and rechecking the bookmarks page on Tokyo Otaku for when they finally restock Shinra's figures so I can add them to my collection. I care because this story is unique, and the animation is unbelievably beautiful, and because I want this show to succeed, not based on how many teenage boys thinks it's funny when a girl gets groped or it's hot to look at nuns in the shower. It deserves to succeed because it's a good show. It's sad that so many animes have to rely on fan service to keep viewership, which is why it's important not to pirate these shows and to buy the DVDs so you can keep supporting the stories you love. Imagine how much better Fire Force would be if every character was as well developed as Shinra. So I ask you this. Try to understand me. Try to have empathy for what I'm saying, from the perspective of a random fucking nerd on the internet who has no life and no friends. Try to understand what life is like when every interpretation of who you are on screen is treated less like a person and more like an object of sexual humor for a throwaway gag, while the real heroes get to go save the day, leaving you behind. You may still watch the show and not feel an ounce of discomfort when someone gets groped in the middle of a tense fight scene, but I hope you remember that I do. And maybe that'll matter to you in the long run. We're in a pandemic. I'll draw a furry dick if I have to. I am not above that. I am a depraved human being. Please commission me. Join my Patreon, link down below.